Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Oliver Joyce from Whiskeybarrel Studios, and welcome to another Ask Me Anything. Now, you may not have seen the questions come up on YouTube for this one, because this is a specific one for all the questions that came up on the Discord channel. Now, I do these sort of every sort of 3 to 4 or 5 months. Whenever there's enough questions, I sort of put this big video together, and this is going to settle in. This is going to take the next sort of 40 to 50 minutes, maybe even longer. These things go for over an hour sometimes. But if there's anything you ever want to know about Sword and Sandals, maybe you'll find the answers here. These questions have come from the Discord channel, the official Sword and Sandals Discord channel, which I'm going to put in a link below. So if you want to join the Discord channel, you can talk to other Sword and Sandals fans, get bits of trivia about the game, find out news about the upcoming Sword and Sandals Immortals, and just have a general yarn. There's some good folk in there, so make sure you join the Discord channel if you're interested. Well, we've got a lot to get through today, and hopefully I'll be as brief and succinct as I can be, because I tend to ramble sometimes, as now. Let's jump into it. All right, so by popular demand, I've put the questions up here on the screen for you, and I'll sort of flip between them and, of course, my face. Okay, we're going back to March this year, the 25th of March, for the first bunch of questions. I'm going to try and answer these questions. I may skip over a few of them if I don't have an answer or I feel like they've been already asked. So I apologize to you if you put a question up. All right, this is from Matt. Are you going to remake the Arena Champions and Dungeon Mob sprites in Sword and Sandals 5 Redux? To be honest, their art style doesn't fit with Sword and Sandals 2 Redux Gladiators. If you don't have so much time, maybe use a program with clever AI to see you could remaster these sprites or make them a better resolution. No plans for that. So I know what he's talking about. The art style of the Gladiators was done by me, and the art style for most of the monsters was done by another artist called Jared Blandthorne. And they actually matched the original Gladiator art, but I took the original Gladiator art to make the game feel more like Sword and Sandals 2 art, but then the monsters didn't really fit. There were a hodgepodge of monsters from all different games, in fact, not just stuff done by him, some by me, and some by other artists. And yeah, it's definitely a mess. Unfortunately, there's no plans to go back and fix them. That game has kind of run its course. Maybe I'll do a redux of a redux one day of that and the other games in a new game engine. Maybe in 4 or 5 years' time. And if so, I would do everything again and have the art be more consistent, because that game definitely had some animation problems as well, because I was trying to get it all to work on a mobile. The Sword and Sandals 5 Redux have New Game Plus. No, it doesn't. You can kind of keep fighting gladiators afterwards, but there's not really much else to do. You got all that money and nowhere to spend it. Did you ever play Sherwood Dungeon? It's an MMORPG which was first created in 2004. No, never played it. Sounds cool though. I love Robin Hood and Sherwood Forest and things. But what about a recording of gameplay for the game's Gladiator? Yeah, I need to do more of those. With the family and lockdown and everything, I haven't had that much time to get on and record videos for fun. So Games Gladiator once again is on hold. So much for season 4, huh? Are you going to make a next best boss challenge competition, but for Immortals? No, because I've got lots and lots of bosses already for this, and there's already like 40 or 50 designed. So there's going to be no plan for a new boss challenge, but you never know. Is there any picture of the Sword and Sandals calendar? I can see Tears Day 8th of Holiday. Oh yeah, no, there's no picture of the calendar, and I'm not even sure how canonical those months and dates are. Like I kind of put them in there for fun, but they do get confusing. I'll put them up one day though, and maybe they'll actually make it as part of Sword and Sandals Immortals, because you do go around this overland map. What's your favorite Rocky and Star Wars part? Yeah. So in previous Ask Me Anything sessions, we've talked about my favorite movies, including Rocky and Star Wars. My favorite Rocky moment is actually the Ivan Drago Apollo Creed fight with the whole James Brown "Living in America," and how it's just this big, loud sort of American spectacle. Then Ivan Drago sort of, he rises up with the Russian flag behind him, and he's like, "What's going on?" And just the sort of the kind of juxtaposition between Apollo's flair and the sort of mechanical steel of Ivan Drago. My favorite Star Wars part, it's absolutely the final battle between Luke and Darth in Return of the Jedi, where Luke, you know what happens, but when finally he defeats Darth, and then the Emperor comes up to him and says, "Now you will join the dark side," and then Luke takes his lightsaber and says, "No, no, I am a Jedi like my father before me." Even now, still gives me goosebumps. I have not seen Rocky Five, of course I have. I haven't seen the director's cut of Rocky Five. Rocky Five, you know what? I'm in the minority here, but I liked it. I thought it was a pretty interesting story to get it off the streets. Out of the ring and into the streets, and have him as a trainer and so on. I found Tommy Gunn to be a more interesting character than a lot of other people. But the fight at the end in the street was a little bit silly. It would be cool to have a bundle with all Fizzy games on Steam and a mini character creator in it. No plans for that. Nah. The Fizzy games are too messy, and to be honest, only Sword and Sandals was really popular. The rest of them had so really mixed popularity, and it's, I think, unlikely that we'd ever revisit them. Why is there a character in Sword and Sandals 5 on Mini Fighter screenshots on Google Play Store? I can't tell you that. I don't know. What's your height? 6 foot, 182, I think I am. Taller in shoes, of course. I was the shortest player on my basketball team, and everyone used to give me grief for being shorty. But then, my family and my wife and people think that I'm tall. But, when you play basketball, that 6 foot is very short. Do you still have access to the Fizzy's Twitter, YouTube, and Game Jolt accounts? No, I never did. Nah. Fizzy was never run by me. Like, I worked for the company that did Fizzy, but nah. I didn't have anything to do with it, really. Tomb of Antares. What is that? I don't know that. Let me just click on that link to see where it may go. Oh, yeah, okay. So I'm just looking at it now. Sword and Sandals News, working title for the game will be Tomb of Antares. That's what the game was going to be called. It's now, of course, called Grail of Antares. There you go. That's a little blast from the past. What are your relationships with Jared Blanthorne? Jared Blanthorne, of course, as I mentioned earlier, was the artist for Swords and Sandals 5. Yeah, he's a good guy. I've known him for many, many years. He actually works for the educational company that I worked for a few years ago, before I went full-time on this. He's a great guy. I don't see him that much, but he's still a friend. Really lovely guy, actually. He does tattoos and things. What is canon, King Lionel the 11th or the 9th? Oh, I can't remember now. I think it's XI. King Lionel, or was it the 9th? I don't know. It was recorded. There's a voiceover of it. King Lionel the 9th. I think it's the 9th. So we need to go and change that in all the documentation as well. It's Constellation Mirror going to be like Sword and Sandals 5 Heroes of Brando? Yeah. It's going to be more like, it's going to be an ultimate style game, and may not even be called Sword and Sandals. We'll see what happens. Okay. Thanks for answering. Here's your coffee as a result. Oh, thank you. What a good guy. And he's just put a few links to the sort of the best boss challenge video. This is me from a long time ago. We can quickly look at that. Let's have a look. So this is a young version of me. See if that loads up. Hi, I'm Oliver Joyce, creator and lead designer of Swords and Sandals. Wow. By now, myself and the team at Third Sense. Can I get full screen? My gosh, it's a long time ago. This is 10 plus years ago. Younger and definitely a lot more camera shy. Very stilted and awkward in front of the camera there. Gosh, that's funny. Yeah, Fizzy, those days long gone, unfortunately. Actually, no, fortunately. I much prefer where I am now to then. All right, thanks for that. We've done 8 minutes of questions from Matt. God, this is going to be a long video. All right. While we're here, I want to take a break to say thank you to all the Patreon supporters of the newly reinvigorated Patreon. You guys are helping me to create more and more games under the Whiskeybarrel Studios label, including Swords and Sandals. And I thank you and I salute you. So that's Ruri, Crazy Ant, Badi X, Jandu Chanahi, Noda Gudajan, Nico, X Up Omega, Ilya Gudovic, John Stayskull, and Jeffro of Hex 3D. Thank you, guys. And if you want to join the Patreon, if you would like to be a patron, that would make my day. Yeah, so doing what the armor says. Join the Patreon in the link below. All right, back with more Discord answers. Okay, back with more Discord questions. And this is from Nick Macho. Question 3. If you'll patch the Classic Collection at any time in the future, is it possible you'll add the Hexapod or Automaton from Sword and Sandals 3 as a race species you can pick to play as? They will be part of Sword and Sandals Immortals. And then if I ever do a Redux of Sword and Sandals 3, they will be in that. But no plans for them to go into Sword and Sandals 3 Classic. Leo Taki asks, I've noticed that Sword and Sandals 4 multiplayer is very buggy. Second, fourth, or third or fourth player cannot create their gladiator. Do you plan to fix it? Yeah, I've tried to fix it so many times, but every time I try to fix it, it creates more bugs. I would love to be able to fix it one day. It's one of the most pressing bugs still on my list. Katsumoto asks, greetings, Ollie, Jolly McGolly. I've got some questions. How long do you think it will take to develop Sword and Sandals 6, now known as Immortals? It's probably the biggest project you've ever done. I think it'll take 2 years for the alpha and beta. I was thinking about it today. Some days it feels huge and kind of overwhelming, Other days it feels like there's, a real roadmap. It's going to be at least April. I've said April on the Steam page, but I'm thinking now it could be June or beyond. That's just one of those. This is a heavy day for that. I've just so much I'm still thinking about what I want to add to the game and that I need to tweak and change. So it will be, early to mid next year. I promise. What's the biggest inspiration for creating the characters? Like, what media influences do you create? Do you create the characters with? I've said this before, but huge influences include He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, of course Star Wars, of course things like Rocky, Gladiator, Kingdom of Heaven, games like Ultima, Wonder Boy. There's a pastiche of things from my childhood that really go into Sword and Sandals, and very much my own imagination as a kid. What is the best way to make the community stay active other than dev news and develop activities? Since most of the time the Discord server is quiet. I think since this message came up, the Discord server has gotten more active. We've got about over 1,200 users now, which is great. I think it's hard for me to build the games and also try and grow the community. That's very much something that happens organically. I think the best thing I can do is just make more content that people want to talk about. What will I do if Sword and Sandals 6 becomes a success? Will I expand or update the game further or move on to another project? I have plans to do a DLC for the Galacticus Fantasticus, hopefully, and maybe a Sword and Sandals 3 Redux DLC as well. We'll see. It just depends how popular the game is. I want to support it with sort of little add-ons and custom items and events and things like that. If the game isn't popular, I'll wrap it up and I'll of course patch it and so on like that. But I would like to move on to another project either way, and that project hopefully is Constellation Mirror. Will you expand Whiskeybarrel Studios, hiring some more permanent members rather than commissioning artwork and so on? It's hard to say. I mean, I've always thought about expanding a little bit. I really would love to work with my good friend John Stayscale from Lost Relic Games. He's the developer of Blood and Mead and a good friend of mine. We've always talked about putting a studio together, and if Blood and Mead is successful and Sword and Sandals Immortals is successful, I'd really like to team up with him and either merge our two studios into one or, keep the two studios in some kind of partnership. I'd love to have a full-time artist as well. I'm working with a great artist called Bokimi now on Sword and Sandals Immortals. I'd love to have a full-time musician. It sort of depends. Because I'm a solo developer, I have to keep costs very lean just to be able to, remain profitable. I think you're in a lot of danger of, a lot of these companies go broke because they expand too big too quickly. So I'm kind of happy to keep things small and lean for now anyway. All right. Do you intend to add more classes and subclasses of Sword and Sandals 4? No. No, that's done. Although maybe I'll do a redux of that one day too. Invictus asks, where can I play Sword and Sandals 5? And Pillow says to him, Sword and Sandals 5 has shut down, but the redux exists. Okay. Will Grug Scummo return in Sword and Sandals 6 or in a future Sword and Sandals installment? For those who don't know, he was the little sort of goblin-looking arena overlord from Sword and Sandals 3. And yeah, let's put a little cameo Easter egg of him in Sword and Sandals 6. I think he was in Sword and Sandals Pirates too. I can't remember. Yeah, he doesn't have a backstory really. He was originally quite a popular. I mean, not popular. I fleshed him out quite a lot in the original stories that became Sword and Sandals that my friend Greg Wee and I wrote. And he was actually a goblin back then, but because there are no actual true goblins in Sword and Sandals, the world of Brandor and Tritonia, there is no goblins and no orcs and that kind of thing. There's pigmen, which is the closest thing you get to goblins. He's a pigman, but yeah, he's like a tricky, just a bit of a dodgy character, but he may return. Can you explain the choices as to why you chose certain characters to be bartenders for a faction in Pirates and also in Crusader? The reason I chose them is because I had the artwork for them. I didn't want to create new artwork, so I chose whichever artwork I still had that would be the most, appropriate. Maya Anor says, is it possible to show some footage of the new Sword and Sandals game? Yes, it is indeed possible, and I have. On that note, I want to show you a little bit more. I would love you guys to certainly be the biggest. It's going to be a real interesting mix of Sword and Sandals 2, Sword and Sandals 3, and of course Swords and Sandals, the overworld map from Crusader. And I'm really just taking all my favorite bits from previous Sword and Sandals games and putting them into what I think will be the greatest Sword and Sandals ever. So please wishlist that game if you are interested in seeing the future of Sword and Sandals. And I'll put a link to that in the Discord below, in the YouTube below. Okay, continuing questions. Demigod Issei asks, question 1, will you please fix Sword and Sandals 4 or make a second version of Sword and Sandals 4? I'd love to make a redux. That is on the list. It sort of depends on the popularity of Immortals and so on. There's never going to be a really big fix for Sword and Sandals 4. It kind of is what it is. It's such an old, busted game with so many mini games. But I would hopefully like to do a redux version of that, or at least a revisiting of that in the years to come, depending on the success of Immortals. He also asks, how much does your donations impact your work? Well, the Patreon, as I showed you earlier, is a small thing at the moment, but it helps. It really does. I've got 10 patrons right now who are, generously giving their money every month to, and what it basically does is it allows me to just spend a little bit more money on music or artwork, or, just pay the bills, so just give me a little bit extra time to continue the work of Sword and Sandals and my other games that I'm planning in the future. Matt says, I think Sword and Sandals VR would be cool. Sword and Sandals 4 VR. That'd be interesting. Okay, skip it down. Is there some kind of god of Zir Hath, asks Pillow, someone who rules the underworld-like area? We don't know. I don't think there is, but it's going to be its own unique story that'll factor into Constellation Mirror, I believe. And he also asked, how were the people who went to Tritonia able to gather so many materials to build starships? So a lot of them were advanced races in their own planets. So they were technologically advanced creatures who somehow build starships and, from different galaxies and star systems and so on. And that technology was lost within a few generations of getting to Tritonia because there's no materials to do that sort of stuff. And, they just didn't have the technology available to them other than what, was through their starships. I got to retcon that a little bit. Maybe the starships lost all their power as a result of going through the mirror and all the electronics stopped working. What software do you use to edit your videos? Most of the time, as you guys know, I don't actually edit my videos much at all. They're usually done in one take. But I actually use a software called Sony Vegas, which is pretty cool. Vegas Pro, I think it is. And that's something really cheap you can pick up on sale for like $20, $25 often on the Humble Bundle. Spoon of Destiny asks, due to Sword and Sandal 6's system of stats needing more points to increase over time, don't you think this will lead to homogenized characters where players will reach a certain cap and just give up on increasing it, meaning less unique characters? Yeah, and that was one of the comments that made me think I should go away from that Dark Souls style leveling up system and go back to the original. Pillow asks, how come Antares can't cast spells in Sword and Sandal 3 despite having the highest magicka? Could you deal with it? Could that deal with his powers as being weakened in the flavor of his chapter? Yeah, I think my intention of him is that's not actually Antares in Sword and Sandal 3. It's like an echo of Antares. That is, the automaton's reconstruction of him. It's not the real Antares you fight here, because he, of course, is dead in 7 different pieces or whatever it is in the 5 different pieces up in Saul's Gateway. Okay. Let's keep looking. Will Sword and Sandal 6 have more languages? Yeah, there are plans for... When I say Sword and Sandal 6, this is back when people were calling it Sword and Sandal 6. Immortals will indeed have other languages supported. So far, plans are for Turkish, Polish, and whatever else I can get my hand on. But that will come towards the end of the project, because there is a lot of dialogue, and I really... it's going to be tough for those poor translators, because I've just... there's tons in there, and that's why, it's something I want to leave to the end so I don't have to do it again. But yeah, I'm planning on supporting multiple languages, like in Spartacus, which it didn't have much text in Spartacus. That was easier. Necron asks, would there be body types like in Sword and Sandal 3, skinny, moderate, and fat, available for the female version? No, they just get their one body type. Melatoon says, I'm about to learn programming languages like Java and Python and take IT courses for certifications. My question for you is, which programming language do you use for Sword and Sandals? I used to use ActionScript 3, which was the Flash language. And these days I use GDScript for Sword and Sandals Immortals, which is basically like Python, actually. So if you know Python, you'd learn GDScript, which is part of Godot, which is what I'm using. For Spartacus, that was made in Unity, and I use C# for that. And C# is a fantastic language. I would definitely recommend learning C# if you want to become a game developer. And C# and GDScript are great for making games. Don't learn ActionScript, because that's a dead language now. Okay. Alex asks, will Charlie Penguins be added in Sword and Sandals 6, or is that a joke? You can never say definitively yes or no when you're dealing with essentially YouTube celebrities of that magnitude, but I'm confident he's going to be in Sword and Sandals Immortals in a kind of fun, surprising role. He has expressed interest in the past, and as recently as last week we talked, and he is keen to be involved. So fingers crossed, because he's been a huge boon for the series. He's been awesome. The Crazed Hunter, Sword and Sandals 3 Genius, says, since you're able to attack enemies' limbs, would that be an homage to Fallout's targeting system? Wasn't inspired by that, but I do know what you mean, where it was different sort of percentage points, and once you did disable things, they couldn't use the weapons, arms, and so on. So yeah, in a way, there is a little bit of a homage to that. I never actually played Fallout. I only ever watched it on a friend's machine. Huff says, I remember asking already, but is Steam Remote Play something you've considered? I'd love to play with my friends without forcing them to buy a game. I don't know if Remote Play will be involved, but you'll definitely have actual multiplayer. So I think that will be better, right? Actual, server architectured, matchmaking multiplayer. That's the plan for Immortals. Okay, in Sword and Sandals 6, Immortals, I gotta keep calling it 6 from back then. Are we going to walk around the map, or is it point and click like in a classic? It'll be point and click. You will find a town location on the map like Dracondir or Braxis or Edengarth or whatever, and you'll click on it and the little caravan will walk along the dots to that map. Kind of similar to Medieval, but it's a much, much bigger map. Dark Crow asks, I'm sure this has been asked many times before, but why don't we have Sword and Sandals 3 Redux? At the time, that was the most sprawling, complicated bit of code that I had. Sword and Sandals 5 got more complicated, but it was based on Sword and Sandals 2 engine, so it wasn't so hard. But 3 was such a hot mess, and it had the most animation that was the hardest to try and recreate, so I ended up not adding it into the Redux series. But because Sword and Sandals Immortals, in fact, has gameplay systems that mirror Sword and Sandals 3 quite similarly, I am planning the DLC for that. Kroll Empire of Polska. Hail to all Polish friends. How you doing? Big shout out. Hi, I have a question. In what year was the first Sword and Sandals? It was 2006, and I actually started earlier than that when I did Who Wants to Be a Gladiator, but that never got released. So I started building these games way back in probably, I'm going to say 1999 or 2000 was when I started drawing those characters. But yeah, like the Crazed Hunter says, 2006 was the official release. Raf99 says, do you, Oliver and people in the southern hemisphere, I guess, celebrate Christmas in July? Not officially. There is a silly little kind of Christmas in July thing where, we sometimes have a little party, but it's not an official Christmas because it's cold in July. But no, we have Christmas on the 25th of December like everyone else, where it's nice and hot. We actually have, we literally have prawns and salads and barbecues for Christmas. And that's kind of surreal to a lot of people, right? Idolized Salt says, can we possibly get Heroic Sports Football on Steam in time for the next World Cup? I would love to just put that together and release it on Steam. I don't know how popular it would be, but I know some people are interested in it. So maybe when I get a bit of free time, if I ever get a bit of free time after when the Immortals, yeah, it might be fun to put it up there. Okay, Straken24 asks, so this is Ask Oliver. I don't have a question. In fact, do you prefer boobs or butts? This is a family channel, my friends. I can't answer that. Count Delanard asks, hi, has anyone managed to see this report? I'd love to play full screen. That's a bug report, which I'm sure we fixed. I hope we fixed anyway. Okay, I answered that. All right. Pillow says, have you played Friday Night Funkin'? I have not, my friends. Pillow says, what would Excelsior be in Sword and Sandals Immortals? A new character? A faction? I'm not sure. It's a cool name, though, popularized by Stan Lee, but it means onward and upward. And I really like that phrase. And that's sort of what Sword and Sandals Immortals was almost called Excelsior, if you recall. But we will see what that might be called. I think maybe Excelsior might be the name of a robot, an automaton robot or something. Jatrov Nedlikchek asks, what will Sword and Sandals Immortals cost? Right now, it's hard to say because the game's not finished, but it's going to be more expensive. I'm going to brace yourselves now. It'll be more expensive than the previous ones because it's a lot bigger and a lot more polished and there's multiplayer. We're looking at probably $20, $25, I'm thinking, So, more expensive, but you'll get your value, I promise. And Sraxton asks, will be some kind of multiplayer in Sword and Sandals Immortals like LAN? There will be multiplayer, and that's being worked on by an associate of mine called Chris Brown. Not the singer, Christopher Brown. And he's a fantastic programmer from America who's generously working on the multiplayer side of things. And I will be working on that. I'll be announcing more on that in the months to come. Crazed Hunter asks, is it possible to beat Sword and Sandals 3 by using only guitar without spells or taunts? You know what? You guys would know. I wouldn't know the answer to that because I'm not very good at Sword and Sandals 3 or any of the Sword and Sandals games. I make them, but I'm pretty bad at playing them, to be honest. Okay, Spoon of Destiny says, with a recent release of Sword and Sandals 3 mod, is modding Sword and Sandals games something you approve of? So to get into this a bit more, unofficially, yes. I think it's fantastic that you guys are modding the games and tweaking them, and I'm kind of amazed at what you've been able to dig up and find the source code and edit and so on. And hats off to you. My only caveat is that you can't do anything commercial with them, so you can't package them up on Steam or Itch and sell them, that kind of thing. If it's free and it's unofficial, go crazy, have fun, and make sure you send me them because I'm I'm really curious and impressed by what you guys do. So yeah, definitely. I think mods are awesome, and I am proud that you guys want to mod my little game series. Kuba S asks, will a new Sword and Sandals or any other Sword and Sandals game have modding for the game? It'd be a dream come true for many fans to add their own champions, weapons, fancy graphics and stuff. It's a challenging one. I would love to have modding as part of Sword and Sandals Immortals in some way. And to an extent, this game may be moddable, but it's going to be challenging. If there is going to be any modding, it will most probably be allowing you guys to mod the way the characters look. And you may be able to bring in photographic images for the skins and that kind of stuff. But it's not going to be super easy. But, you know, if it's possible, I'll make it happen. Probably not for launch, but in a future patch. Matt says, when's an Ask Me Anything video? Hey, here it is. Okay, and I answered some questions here. There you go. It's already answered those, but I answered them again. Let's see how consistent my answers were to the past. Okay. Iraqi King 980 asks, will Sword and Sandals Immortals make its way to mobile? Yes, I am hoping so. It's going to be challenging again too, because the game is half a gigabyte in size now, so I've got to somehow get that down to fit on mobile without expansions and stuff. You know, we'll figure out a way. But yeah, Steam first, and then in the months to come, hopefully iOS and Android. Because yes, it is planned. Necron said it's planned for the Switch. Probably not on the Switch though. Didn't have a great experience with Spartacus and the Switch, so it's unlikely we'll see Immortals on the Switch anytime soon. Although again, never say never. Okay, Riri, yeah, it's Riri from the Patreon. How you doing, my friend? Salute you. I know it's probably the most asked question, but when Fizzy went down, what happened to people who bought the games on it? Yeah, why did Fizzy go down? Well, you know, commercial reasons I don't want to get into right now, but you know, eventually the popularity of web portals disappeared. You know, with the end of Flash and so on, and Flash portals were no longer very, you know, profitable. So the people that were VIPs, and I get asked this a lot, the VIPs that bought, you know, lifetime supply of games from Fizzy and so on, yeah, that's no longer available, unfortunately, either. And I have nothing to do with Fizzy. That was the old company. So I want to apologize to everyone that, you know, did buy that. And individually, sometimes I can help you out with a Steam key here and there. But that's not, unfortunately, that's not my area anymore. That is, yeah, it's like when a company goes bankrupt or whatever, it's, you know, all bets are off the table. So, yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. And I didn't really agree with, you know, what happened. But I think we're in good hands now with Whiskeybarrel Studios and E-Games and the Sword and Sandals series going forward. So, yeah, that's my answer to that. Magiboss asks, can you nerf the mage in what game? All of them? I'm hoping to balance the mortals quite nicely, you know, and hopefully the mage won't be as all-powerful. Necron says, why was the option of changing the quality removed in Sword and Sandals 3? Well, there's a reason for that, and the reason is when I made the Steam versions, the underlying Flash build that runs them no longer supports anti-aliasing, and the quality was basically a trigger of anti-aliasing. What anti-aliasing thing is basically when you see art that has little jagged pixels on the edge and doesn't look smooth, anti-aliasing smooths them all, and so the quality looked better. But because the version of Flash and Air that ran the Steam games didn't support that, there was no point in having quality, so that's why it was removed. It was a Flash browser only thing, to get technical. Okay, when does the new Sword and Sandals appear, says Royal Flush? Oh, we talked about that earlier. Hopefully April, May next year. Fingers crossed. Yeah, General Nitsky says, if I remember well, I was aiming to release a little demo at the October Steam Festival. That is no longer on the cards because I don't have enough time. I was being really optimistic in my in my thoughts. However, it will be hopefully part of the February Steam Festival, which is very much the next festival, which is closer to the launch date. Why Rubicon asks, why are you remaking, updating, and patching the Sword and Sandals to 3 series? Do you mean when? I'm hoping to do some patches for the games at the end of the year, like I try to do every year. Mr. Bean asks, why am I dumb? You're not dumb. And even General Nitsky the Machine says the same thing. You're not dumb. Everyone has their own specialty. Some have high IQ, some have a high EQ, as in, emotional intelligence. So, yeah. Commodore Raisin says, I just want to say hi to Mr. Oliver Joyce. Hello, Commodore. How are you, my friend? I hope you're still watching here in August. Mr. Bean says, why aren't the fart taught an attack in Sword and Sandals like it is in Grossed Out? That actually it's back for Sword and Sandals Immortals. The special ability. Yeah, it's back, I promise. I put that in just yesterday. It's going to be fun. So Mr. Mike X says, I've isolated myself from the server for quite a long time, but I returned to ask a question. And he says, thanks for everything. Why are there so many Polish gladiator nicknames? Well, the answer to that is because there are so many Polish fans of the series, along with the Turkish people, the Czechs, the Poles, and the people of Brazil. I think they're probably the most popular, the largest fan bases. And so I wanted to honor those people by adding them in Sword and Sandals Immortal character names, and you might see them in a few other names as well. Plus, they're just cool sounding names. So I've tried in Immortals to have as many different character names from different backgrounds as well. Mateo Fett asks, oh yeah, he says it's Sword and Sandals Immortals. Yep, great. Izen Romet asks, will the next game include grinding to level up like in Sword and Sandals 2 or Sword and Sandals 3? Yeah, there'll be there's always a bit of an element of grind in these games. I'll try to make it fun grind, but it remains to be seen how much grinding. Mr. Bean says, will it be like Sword and Sandals 4, the best game ever? There may be a mini game or two in there. I'm going to work out how much time we have, but I had a few little sneaky ideas for at least one mini game. Feature creep. That's why this series goes for so long. That's why these things take so long to make. AJXX asks, hey Oliver, is it possible for you to talk about cut or unused content from your games? I think it'd be cool to see what things didn't make into the final versions. If you check out my early videos on this channel, I did a sort of a let's play of all the earlier games, and I think I talked about some unused content in there. I think I've done a video on this in the past, but there's not much else to see really. Everything has already been seen, but check out the early versions of my channel to see alternate versions of the games and that kind of thing. And maybe I might even make a special more current version of that just for fans who haven't seen those old videos, because the channel has grown since the early days as well. Not much more in the vault there, but there's still bits and pieces. Zudas asks, will be multiplayer for Immortals? Yep, absolutely. Kang Pill Bikini Bottom says, is this time a combination of arena and RPG like Sword and Sandals 5? Much more arena, but there will be RPG elements to it for sure. Riri asks, I get a good question. Is it possible to make Classic Collection on mobile? I wish there was possible, but unfortunately that game was made in pure Flash, and it doesn't port to mobile, unfortunately. You can't get them to run without remaking them completely. So I can never get it to run, unfortunately. There is a version you've heard of called Deadly Gladiator, but what that is actually, it's running in a Flash browser in the mobile, but that is a no-go these days as well. So yeah, it's a real can of worms. I'd tried so many times to get Classic Collection working on mobile. It was a dead end every time. Jean d'Arc asks, are they going to be alien races in Immortals? Since it's a Galacticus Fantasticus. It's not actually the Galacticus Fantasticus tournament. That is at the end of Sword and Sandals 3, the Starbound Gladiator goes off to fight in that. This is what happens afterwards. But then we may do some DLC for that as well. Ozzy Mashi has a long comment, but that's a lovely comment. He said, the character design in Weaponsmith is identical behavior and appearance of my beloved grandfather, whose last hobby was blacksmithing. That's awesome. And he's now a blacksmith himself. That is so cool. I was just talking to my son Isaac about blacksmithing. We got a little Lego medieval blacksmith, and he loves it. And I think it's such a cool trade, and I love that it's one of those trades that has been around since Roman times and earlier, and still today you see smiths. And I just think it's just one of those, working with your hands in a forge. There's something primeval about it. And I think that's awesome that your grandfather was a blacksmith, and you are also a blacksmith. And the armor is one of my favorite characters in Sword and Sandals too. The Goth brothers, he says. So he got into heavy metal because of this as well. The Goth brothers making the metal hammer. Those guys were basically two of the guys from the metal band Deconstructivist who did the Swords and Sandals metal theme in Sword and Sandals 3. And I got good news. If you're a metal fan, there's going to be a couple of heavy metal tracks in this one done by an awesome metal band called Overthrown. And that's Over Throne, like a king's throne. And you're going to love these versions of them. And I heard them just the other day, and they are immaculate. Anyway, thank you so much for the great comment. And thanks for being a fan, you and everyone else. I'm just so humbled that my games have inspired you, and, in whatever small way they can. Yusidere asks, so is equipment of Immortals going to be like Sword and Sandals 3? I asked this mostly out of curiosity, considering the storyline from the game continued. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be very much that sort of Diablo style prefix and suffix where, kings, acts of wonder, that kind of thing. But I'm planning on making it a little bit more special than that. I got this idea where you can go and on your adventures you find, and in battles you win designs. And designs might be like you find a design for bear, and all of a sudden you can craft your weapon, sword of the bear with these plans. And so once you give these designs to the armor and the weaponsmith and so on, they can then start adding those weapons to their collection. And then every randomly you might see sword of the bear, axe of the bear, that kind of thing. So yeah, you're going to find the weapons are much more interesting than they were in Sword and Sandals 2, even though the base weapons are very much the same as you see in Sword and Sandals 2 and 3. There will be randomness, but calculated randomness to them. Ultra Instinct says, hey Oliver, I just wanted to say I became a patron to support your amazing work, and it was a great decision. Thank you. I appreciate it. Ultra Instinct, you must go by a different name on the Patreon. And if not, let me know and I'll add you to the patrons list. My question is, thanks again, my friend. Will it happen that some sort of tournaments between players or even a clan system? We're planning on leaderboards at the moment and global rankings. Depending on the popularity of the multiplayer, I would love to expand it to things like clans and tournament. But one step at a time, because feature creep is a real thing. Cheers, Pialo. AJXX says, will the game have a Steam demo? There's a plan to have a Steam demo as part of the next fest, but maybe a limited time demo that just has a little bit of, lasts for 2 weeks or something. But I think you have to have a demo to put it up on the next fest. Okay, someone whose name is in some kind of Chinese character writing. I apologize if it's not Chinese, but he asks, will it make sense for the automatons to have no health but converted to armor? Yeah, because they're automatons. You're right. So automatons will have battery energy instead of essence, and they will have armor instead of health. So it's going to be very interesting. They all play quite differently, and they don't get affected by taunts, and they don't get tired and that kind of thing. So they're quite a powerful but different character build to play with. There's even going to be a robotics tree. That's a big announcement here for those who've stuck around this long. There's a robotics talent tree that you'll be able to level up. So yeah, automatons will be the most interesting playable characters in the game, I think. Necron says, is Antares going to be an Easter egg, or at least mentioned? Yeah, we got to have him in there, right? We'll figure out a way to get either his armor set or a nod to him or an Easter egg to him in there, because it's it's like Star Wars without Darth Vader. You got to have him in there, right? AJXX asks, are we going to have multiple endings? No plans for multiple endings at the moment, but again, never say never. I'm just aware of feature creep. I keep saying yes to all this stuff, but then I worry that I'm trying to do too much. Hey, it's Panos asks, is the boss arena from Sword and Sandals 3 coming back? You betcha. Yeah, well, at least one of them will be in the game. I'm actually having the artwork for that commission now. I got to choose which one though. I'm thinking it will probably be one of the battle pits, like the skull, the underground one with all the spikes, most likely. Diduge asks, will gladiators have names of YouTubers like in Sword and Sandals 2 Redux? There are plans, at least for, and I'm trying to work out this. There are going to be a single player campaign is Immortals, right? Which will actually be called Sword and Sandals 6, and that'll have its own tagline, like, Age of the Automatons or something like that. But that'll be part of Immortals, and it'll actually have a little 6 logo. But then there'll be a multiplayer mode where you can go in and fight players from around the world, but you'll also be fighting, testing your strength against certain bots, and those bots will have YouTuber names, such as Karolek, huge popular YouTuber of Poland, Danny, the popular game developer, if you know DANI, he's signed up, and Fly Guns from Czech Republic, and of course Critical is going to be involved, and Easy Speezy, the speedrunner. So that's who we have at the moment, and none of that is 100% locked in, but I've got some verbal agreements from those guys to be involved. But yeah, there'll be bots that you can test your strength at different levels in the multiplayer version. Thematically, they don't really fit very well with Immortals, with the single player version. So I wanted to just differentiate that a bit. So hopefully that clears up some things for you. Was there a CD collector's version of Sword and Sandals? Would you be cool to buy Sword and Sandals 3 on CD? Asks Riri. That would be cool. I always wanted to have a boxed edition, but no plans. Unfortunately, too expensive. Sometime Matt says I made concept art for a Sword and Sandals Classic Collection box. Put it up. I'd love to see it. I also did some fake boxes as part of the Classic Collection. When you load that up, you can see these sort of computer boxes. They look kind of cool, but they're never going to... I don't think... It's too expensive. Since you mentioned that Critical Penguins will be in Sword and Sandals Immortals, will we see references to CK Juicer? You know who I'm talking about. You can read the text. But as I said, not as part of the single-player campaign, but these guys will be bots. Okay. Critical is not a Patreon, but he's done so much. Charlie Penguins we're talking about here. He's done so much for the series with his videos that are... that's worth. He might as well be a patron. He's a great, spiritual patron of the series. Cass says, will there be Steam achievements? It'll be fun and challenging to grind achievements. A lot of Steam users enjoy playing the game for the achievements because it motivates them. There's going to be achievements for sure. I know that the Classic Collection and so on doesn't have it, but you will find there will be lots of achievements and hopefully trading cards too. Omno asks, will a fearful prisoner be in Immortals? Again, we got to have him in there somehow. Maybe you walk on down the road and you see him, having his own little adventure somewhere. I want to have lots of Easter eggs in this game. Okay, Melatonin asks, I'm about to learn programming Java and Python. I think you answered this before. We answered this before, but yeah, GD script and ActionScript and C#. And also, Melatonin, I hope your course is going well, your programming course, and very best of luck. And you can't go wrong with just learning Java and JavaScript and C# and so on, just for programming in general. If you want to be a programmer, not just a game programmer, you can do quite well out of that. Mandatar asks, will there be a third strategy-based Sword and Sandals game like Crusaders and Pirates in the future? Hopefully. Yeah, I'd really love to do like a Warcraft 2 style real-time strategy game. If I ever made Crusaders 2, it would be real-time strategy. I'd change it up because now that I got access to Godot and this new technology, there's so much more cool stuff I can do. And I really wish I'd done the Redux series in Godot. I almost feel like doing a Redux of the Redux games using this because it's so much more just better, if you know what I mean. Helsing says, will there be more unique weapons like throwing weapons and explosives? Yeah, I'm planning on having throwing weapons in the game for sure. You can even throw your potions after you drink them. Dalgurak17 says, will the boss equipment be usable, obtainable? It's not programmed in there, but I think it will. I think it's a good idea to be able to get boss weapons and helmets and so on. Maybe even only choosing one piece or something. but having the unique boss helmet is quite a fun thing. Crazed Hunter says, why are guitars underrated? To me, they seem the best weapon to defeat any Gladiator Arena champion. Well, of course, they have their own talent tree in Sword and Sandals Immortals, and new animations for them and new abilities, which will be distance-based and sonic damage and that kind of stuff. So they will return in Immortals and hopefully be a viable skill tree, because they were a little bit underpowered. Okay, Straken asked the same question again here. But boobs or butts, but I'm not going to answer. Be a family channel. We're not even a family channel, but yeah, I can't, you know, yeah. Throw me. Drago Fist says, will Sword and Sandals Immortals have big chungus? I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. Explain to me in the comments, maybe. Pillow says, have you ever tried to do, can you beat, insert game name here, without doing this challenge? It's a trend nowadays for YouTubers. Yeah, no, I haven't. I'm not really into sort of playing games any other way than the easiest way. I'm not very good at games, and I just finished Demon's Souls on PlayStation 5. And to be honest, I did the cheese route. I found out the most optimal build and whatever exploits I could. I just wanted to get through it because I like seeing the story of the games. And I like seeing, you know, the worlds and the lore and the mechanics, but I don't really want to grind through games so much. Mr. Bean says, will you try making a video of the original Buggy Sword and Sandals 5 for the people who have not been able to see it yet? You can't even play it anymore. It's impossible because all the code used to talk to a server where it would query the server for how much gold do I have, what items do I have, and that kind of thing. Because that server was part of the old Fizzy system and everything. It's long gone, so I can't even get it to run. I can't even run it on my own machine, unfortunately. So the only thing that remains of that is old video footage. And you can sort of see that on YouTube somewhere. You type in sort of Sword and Sandals and select Sword and Sandals 5 from maybe 2012. You can probably see gameplay of it. Motongi Kusanagi, completely bollocks your name, I'm sorry. Motoku Kusanagi of Japan asks, maybe in the future will Sword and Sandals 3 Part 2 fighting in the Galacticus Fantasticus? I assume, I apologize if you're not from Japan, but that's a Japanese surname. It's a really cool name. I love Japan. I want to go there one day again, take my family. Anyway, yeah, Galacticus Fantasticus will return. Indeed, it will return for Sword and Sandals Immortals. Yeah, so that will return as part of a DLC pack. And it'll be cool to have some starships and planetary stuff. But we'll see where that goes. That will sort of depend, of course, on the success of Immortals too. Mateus asks, will the newest Sword and Sandals game have a Steam workshop? I've answered this before. I'd love to make the game moddable if possible. Not with launch, though. It may come later. And DLC content on multiple campaigns. I hope the game is longer than previous Sword and Sandals games, says AJXX. Yeah, this game is going to be longer than the other ones. Big overland map, and it'll be less grindy as well, with over 25 arenas to fight in. So that's there's a lot right there.